But I don't even know about that. But regardless, he knows the game. And then he marries Melania. And then more and more, like, he was in charge when Epstein went down. He was the only one that when Epstein got arrested.
Amid the endless political storm in America, whispers in the shadows are gradually becoming an obsession for the media. A terrifying truth is being exposed, not only about the past of a first lady, but also about a national security loophole that could be lying right within the walls of the White House bedroom.
Epstein knows her well.
The story doesn't begin with love, but with a carefully orchestrated plan. The Kremlin is no longer hiding its true intentions. After months of praising Trump as a potential asset, Moscow's propagandists suddenly shifted their tone. They no longer saw him as a useful ally. Instead, they turned their attention to the woman standing beside him. Russian state TV began mercilessly attacking Melania Trump, blaming her for Trump's increasingly hardline stance against Putin. They pointed to his commitment to supply more weapons to Kyiv and threatened further sanctions on Moscow as evidence. Olga Kabeva, host of Russia's 60 Minutes, wasted no time calling the First Lady a Ukrainian agent, using old provocative images of her to demean and discredit her. The Kremlin-friendly newspaper Vyskad went even further, publishing an editorial titled The Underestimated Danger of Melania Trump to Russia. They sarcastically suggested that Trump should buy her shoes instead of selling missiles to Kyiv. Russia no longer viewed her as a fashion icon. They saw her as a threat, an agent, a dangerous Melania Trumpo. This dramatic 180-degree shift raises a bitter question. Are they deliberately revealing a secret they've held for a long time? Are they signaling to the world that they know exactly where Trump's weakness lies because they or their allies were the ones who helped place it there? While Russia labels her as a Ukrainian agent, another darker and far more frightening conspiracy theory suggests the root of the problem might run even deeper.
Epstein knows her well. Epstein says the first time Donald Trump and Melania have is on his airplane.
The story of First Lady Melania Trump is not just a tale of politics. It's a decadescent-long intelligence operation, and America is only now realizing it has been the target. It all began long before she set foot in the White House in an underground world of power, money, and dark secrets controlled by Jeffrey Epstein. Zampoli wasn't just a friend of Trump. He had ties to both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Their world was one of very young Eastern European models, brought to parties where wealthy men would show up and mingle with the models. The Kit Kat Club wasn't some romantic cafe,
where there were parties that were frequently thrown for very rich Manhattan elites, businessmen, to mingle and find very young models from Eastern Europe. And Melania.
This was the first vulnerability, a potential asset strategically placed in position. A woman with a complicated past brought into the orbit of a billionaire who was about to become president by an international network for opposing intelligence agencies. This was a gift from the heavens. They didn't need to do anything. They just had to wait. And wait they did. The opportunity arrived when Trump as president took a tougher stance on the Ukraine war. The Kremlin, with the patience of a seasoned hunter, decided the time had come to use the weapon they had long been observing. The story was there, ready to be exploited. They painted a very specific scenario. Trump had mentioned in a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in the Oval Office, according to USA Today, that he went home and told the First Lady that he had spoken with Vladimir today and they had a great conversation. She seemed surprised before revealing that another city had been in this way. Russia painted a perfect picture. The U.S. president was being manipulated by a foreign agent right in his own home. To make the attack even more humiliating, they Melania's past.
Show Melania in order to mock Donald Trump. So they show all these photos of Melania. By the way, Melania's previously made posts about how proud she is of her.
Meanwhile, Trump, instead of recognizing the strategic danger, focused solely on the personal insult. He exploded in fury, not because national security was at risk, but because of Joe Rogan's comments about his wife's appearance.
She's without a doubt the hottest first lady of all time. This lady's hot.
Kennedy's wife was
pretty.
Was a good-looking chick, right?
She was a very beautiful woman, but this lady's hot.
Yeah.
She's hot.
But I think Kennedy's...
professionally.
Yes. How old is she? She's a lot younger than Trump.
She's younger than Trump, but she's probably in her 40s.
Trump couldn't see see the bigger picture. All he saw was his ego being tarnished. This blindness is truly frightening. The path that allowed Melania to root herself in America is equally murky. She received the Einstein visa for individuals with extraordinary abilities. Then she used the chain migration policy, something her husband labeled a disaster, and swore to eliminate to bring her parents to the U.S.
Melania Trump used a legal pathway that her husband and his top advisors has repeatedly disparaged as chain migration, the right of U.S. citizens to bring their parents to the United States. Federal law since 1965 has said U.S. citizens may apply to bring minor children and parents to join them in the United States without having to wait a long time for a visa.
When she entered the White House, her performance continued. The Be Best campaign was nothing but a shameless farce. Her speech at the Republican National Convention was a blatant insult.
And of course, Melania would plagiarize Michelle Obama's speech at the Democratic National Convention. Literally, Melania's speech during Trump's first Republican National Convention was literally copy and pasted of Michelle Obama.
Not a word of apology, not an ounce of shame. Her indifference was most evident through her husband's scandals. When the Access Hollywood tape was leaked, she simply brushed it off, comparing her nearly 60-year-old husband to a teenage boy. She covered for him like a partner in a business deal.
He's able to compartmentalize so completely and so utterly uncaringly. There is no, she knows who she married and he knows who he married. She knows what she got into and she knows what she gets from this marriage. And that's where
now, as the 2024 campaign is underway, the mask seems to be falling off. Melania has almost disappeared from the public eye. What you really notice through her absence is Melania. Normally, men in situations like this would have a loyal wife standing beside them. Well, Melania is nowhere to be found. Perhaps her most genuine moment was harshly mocked by a comedian, but it might not be too far from the truth.
People always asking me, what was your favorite memory as First Lady? It was in 2020 when Donald get the China virus and he was airlifted to hospital like sick elephant. Darren and I threw party on that lawn. We danced around giant bonfire and shot fire cookers at Mike Pence. I had Lincoln bedroom all to myself and did not sleep wink.
The truth is gradually coming to light. In his fury, Trump failed to recognize the real danger. He may be worried about attacks from the Democratic side.
This could be your legacy. This could be your legacy. This could be your legacy, right? Because he used to be friends with those people. Even though I don't think he was blackmailed, because I think that would have come out when the Democrats were going for him.
Right.
And maybe he was involved in the trafficking a little bit.
But he doesn't see the dagger pressed against his side, placed there by his own former ally. While politicians argue over policies, a national security loophole named Melania Trump remains unresolved. She is a living legacy of Jeffrey Epstein, a tool in the hands of the Kremlin, and an enigma that Trump either cannot or will not decode. This entire story reveals a chilling truth. The most powerful man in the world could be the most easily manipulated through a fatal weakness he still mistakes for love. The American people who placed their trust in a promise to make America great again now face the harsh reality that their own house may have been infiltrated from within, not by an army, but by an Eastern European model with a carefully concealed past. Trump's name doesn't just show up repeatedly in the Epstein files. He's also been front and center in some jaw-dropping podcast episodes. And recently, Joe Rogan may have just pushed him over the edge by pulling back the curtain on Trump's ties right in front of millions.
Nobody has ever interviewed her from DOJ, right? So, Department of Justice. So this is the first time the Department of Justice, you're telling me, and meanwhile, up on Capitol Hill, you got Democrats like Adam Schiff and others going, we have got to release these files. They had 4 years under the previous administration, right?
Yeah.
Look, everybody's fucked in this situation, but they had all that time to do whatever they wanted to do. And nobody, up until this point, apparently has talked to her. Now, you know, some folks on the legal side are saying, well, look, if she had anything interesting to say, she would have said it during the course of her trial, right? To save herself or to cut a deal.
No.
But now
I don't think so.
I don't,
They'll kill her.
Yeah. Well,
the smartest thing for her to do is to keep her fucking mouth shut, which is what she did.
Right.
They put her in a cushy prison where she could do yoga.
Yeah.
MAGA's top podcast host, Joe Rogan, dropped a bombshell on Donald Trump in a recent episode. Rogan and his guest made it clear they were deeply disturbed by how Epstein's death was handled and even more disappointed by Kash Patel's statements about it. And mind you, Rogan was once a strong supporter of Trump's 2024 campaign. He's not a conspiracy theorist by nature, but when the Epstein scandal resurfaced, even Joe started to entertain some very uncomfortable questions. They didn't stop at Epstein either. Rogan and his guests dove into new info about a meeting between a deputy attorney general and Ghislaine Maxwell, and let's just say they found it very suspicious. Here's what's got everyone raising their eyebrows. Deputy AG Todd Blanche spent 9 hours over 2 days with Ghislaine Maxwell this past Friday, but no one, not the press, not even the victims' legal teams, knows what was discussed. Todd Blanche, in case you forgot, is the same lawyer who defended Trump in several of his most explosive court cases. And now, the fact that the number 2 official in the Justice Department personally met with a convicted felon under investigation, that's unprecedented. Epstein's victims aren't staying silent either. Even Jack Scarella, the attorney representing around 20 of them, said he requested to be present during the Maxwell interviews, but was denied access. So yeah, now you can see why Rogan and his guest were more than just curious. Usually high-ranking DOJ officials don't walk into prisons to chat with convicts. That's a job for prosecutors. So if Todd Blanche himself went to see Maxwell, it means she's sitting on something massive, something worth breaking protocol for. And why Todd Blanche? Why not Pam Bondi? Well, here's where it gets murkier.